The Junkers J.I represented a massive leap in aircraft design philosophy while also being a truly exceptional combat airplane in its own right. Designed to fly close along the front lines and support infantry operations, the J.I was uniquely capable thanks to its armor-plated fuselage and duralumin construction. Its radical design was the culmination of years of experimentation and refinement from the concepts of Professor Hugo Junkers. Junkers holds a position of immense importance in aviation, being the creator of the all-metal airplane and the head of one of history's most famed airplane firms. He had completed his studies in 1888, obtaining a degree as a Baumeister or factory official before going on to work in a gas engine design firm and inventing a number of appliances from a calorimeter for gas testing to home water heating systems. While accumulating patents, he would continue his academic studies, and in 1897 he would be made a professor of thermodynamics. It was in 1910 that his colleague Professor Hans Reisner would suggest he venture into the field of aviation, and the two would work together for a time. Eventually, Junkers would move all his work to his own firm at Dessau, where he had his own experimental space. Professor Junkers felt that the inherently high parasitic drag of biplanes combined with the external supports was a major handicap in aircraft design, and he believed that metal construction would completely revolutionize airplane development. Using a thick, rigid wing that was internally supported, the resultant aircraft would be aerodynamically cleaner, and the internal space within the wing could be used to store fuel or ammo. His first major effort to build such an aircraft began near the end of 1914 as a privately funded venture with the assistance of the engineers Otto Reuter and Otto Mada. Supplied with tooling and materials from Dr. Junkers' own enterprise, they proceeded, and in 4 months they had built their own plane. The Junkers J.I was as revolutionary a design in airplane development as had been seen since the invention of the plane itself. It was a steel monoplane, the first to feature cantilevered wings which were sparless and consisted of a steel framework welded to an inner corrugated skin over which it was skinned in smooth sheet steel. It proved to be extremely sturdy, but it was also a very heavy aircraft. Beyond the original benefits Professor Junkers envisioned for his new planes, the war and the subsequent mass production of airplanes had shown there were more practical challenges in operating wood and fabric aircraft. As the number of airplanes increased, storage space became a premium, and canvas biplanes could not be allowed to sit in poor weather lest their wooden frames and delicate canvas skin become warped. Pilots in combat also soon discovered their greatest fear beyond the enemy's guns was fire, which, no matter how minor at first, often became a death sentence to anyone whose plane began to burn. However, a metal aircraft with a canvas cover could sit in nearly any weather without issue, and a fire on board such a plane wasn't liable to spread rapidly. A pilot could ditch his plane in an emergency in most circumstances, saving him from a very grisly end. As an experimental aircraft, it was an undeniable success, having proven both that an all-metal aircraft was well within the material restrictions of the time, and that massive reductions in drag were possible using this construction. The Junkers J.III would never be completed, but it was the first Junkers project to feature the famous corrugated duralumin skin. Given that it was still a fairly soft material, the bends in the skin would give it the necessary strength to not only act as lifting surfaces, but also structurally reinforce the entire structure by taking shear forces. It would also use a new tubular framework for the wings, built up around a set of stronger tubular spars. While this aircraft would never be finished, these new features would be carried over into the firm's next design, which would prove to be its first major success. By the end of 1916, not only had the war on the Western Front grown into a vicious battle for trench lines on either end of an unsurvivable no-man's land, but aircraft had proven to be an essential means of understanding the depth of this new and horrible form of warfare. Enemy trenches could only be surveyed from high ground, which was vulnerable to enemy fire, and the buildup of forces were completely hidden from their traditional opponent, cavalry. Aerial reconnaissance thus became invaluable in mapping out labyrinthine trench works, finding the positions of enemy guns, and observing the movements of the enemy away from the front lines. Two-seater recon planes were adopted, and fighters were later developed to shoot them down and seize control of vital airspace. But through 1916, the offensive use of aircraft began in earnest. While a canvas biplane had no hope of attacking reinforced trench lines, unable to resist machine gun fire, they could attack enemy infantry at the foremost positions or as they moved through no man's land. While Germany had employed ground attack squadrons in early 1916, it was the use of British infantry contact patrols using fighters and two-seaters through the Battle of the Somme that spurred them to develop these tactics further. Moreover, they wanted specialized infantry harassment aircraft beyond their unmodified two-seater biplanes. Losses among these units were high, and the IDFLIG, or Inspector of Aviation Forces, produced specifications for specialized infantry aircraft. This new plane was to be equipped with armor plate which could enclose the pilot, gunner, engine, and fuel stores with a minimum thickness of 5 mm. They were also given a low minimum ceiling of 1,500 meters. Junkers approached the specification with a new concept entirely. While he was forced to build a biplane according to the IDFLIG's specifications, he was still granted considerable leeway with the design. Junkers himself would not be as hands-on with this project as he had been with the J1, 2, and 3, so instead he elected to put the project in the hands of a team of engineers. The design of the Junkers J4 would be managed by Otto Mada, along with teams headed by the engineers Otto Reuter, Hans Steudel, and Franz Brandenburg. While it was a biplane, the new aircraft still drew from the experiences and design philosophy of previous projects. Its wings featured corrugated duralumin skin over the multi-sparred tubular duralumin framework and were in a sesquiplane arrangement, with the lower wing being significantly smaller in length and chord than the top one. They were connected by an inner set of struts, but being self-supporting, they needed no bracing wires. Its armor protection was comprehensive. Half of the fuselage consisted of an octagonal steel compartment which contained the engine, pilot, gunner, and fuel. The rear of this armored section was a tubular frame which ended with a conventional tail section. Unlike Junkers' earlier underpowered efforts, this new plane was equipped with a significantly more powerful 200 horsepower Benz B4A straight-six engine. 3 prototypes were ordered on November 3, 1916, and delivered the following January. On the 28th, one prototype with a 200 horsepower Benz 4A was flown by German officer Arvid von Schmidt without armor plate for testing. Taking off from deep snow, Schmidt took the plane up to 250 meters and reached a speed of 155 kilometers per hour, finding that the aircraft was stable if tail-heavy. The demonstration secured the purchase of 100 additional planes, and the Junkers J4 was thus accepted into service as the Junkers J1 under the German Air Service's designation system. Given that the workshops at Dessau had yet to ever receive an order for a mass-produced aircraft, building the new planes at a fast enough rate proved difficult. There were 2 major challenges. First was that while Professor Junkers was a brilliant inventor, he and his firm were fairly inexperienced when it came to aircraft production. And second, given that this was the first mass-produced all-metal aircraft, the methods of mass-producing it would be learned right alongside it. The Army foresaw this becoming an issue and brought in Anthony Foucault, a master in aircraft production, in order to set up an aircraft factory alongside Junkers & Company in Dessau. The first J1 to see service was the first off the production line, number 100 TAC 17, which was sent to the front in August of 1917, where it served with the Fliegerabteilung 19. On one of its first missions, the unit commander flew the plane on a low-altitude recon mission near Ypres, Belgium, and found that the plane was not only faster and better handling than the Albatros and AEG J-types, but that he had received 11 hits to his aircraft without issue. FA-19 continued to fly the aircraft, and on one occasion, on September 23rd, 100 TAC 17 was hit 85 times without suffering serious damage. By October, the unit had accumulated enough experience to give an account on using the aircraft. In addition to its excellent protection from bullets and shrapnel, the plane could be flown confidently in weather that kept all others grounded, and it had an excellent glide ratio, which meant that in the event of engine failure, a pilot could still glide his plane back over to friendly lines and evade capture. However, it also required a long takeoff run, and it had a higher landing speed than most aircraft. Luckily, these were issues that could be solved by instruction from the more experienced pilots and practice. Overall, the Junkers J.I proved to be an excellent aircraft from the appraisal of FA-19. After its frontline trials with FA-19, the Junkers J.I would begin to be distributed to the Schützenstaffel, or protection flight units, whose job was to patrol the area between the opposing trench lines. This entailed a variety of missions from escorting two-seater recon aircraft to ground attack missions, with each unit consisting of some 67 men and 6 planes. Up until 1918, this role was filled by the more versatile two-seater aircraft, like the Halberstadt CL-2, but come the winter of 1917, a small number of armored J-type planes were entering service with them. This included 4 Junkers J-1s issued to the Schuster in December of 1917, a number which would grow to 60 by August of the following year, along 186 armored planes of other manufacturers. The nature of this change was revealed more fully when the Schuster were redesigned Schlachtstaffel, or attack flights, during the March offensive. The Junkers J-1 was used as a support aircraft whose role was primarily reconnaissance and infantry liaison work. The rear seat was equipped with a mostly defensive 7.62mm machine gun and occasionally a 20mm Becker autocannon in service. The plane's most important job was to survey areas of the battlefield that were in contention, to take photographs of bottlenecks in the terrain, or send reports of urgent developments directly to divisional HQs via wireless telegraph. First and foremost, the mission of J-1 crews was to assist in communicating the state of the changing battlefield. Messages were also delivered to the HQ from the front lines, as telegraph wires were easily knocked out by artillery fire. Aircraft were directed by signalers attached to infantry brigades by the use of flares, lamps, and fabric strips to mark the position of friendly forces and enemy positions. In service, crews rendered excellent service with these aircraft, and many swore by them. One Lieutenant Wagner of Fliegerabteilung 268 flew a mission on March 28th, at an altitude of 80 meters over the front. During the mission, his observer was wounded and his own helmet was shot through, but his plane, number 128, received over 100 hits, which did nothing to impede its performance. The lieutenant was amazed by this, as he'd overflown the enemy trenches, something that would have been suicidal in nearly any other aircraft. Amazingly, in over a year of service, only one aircraft seems to have been brought down by enemy fire. Its excellent service history notwithstanding, the Junkers J-1 was also a pivotal design in aviation. It not only introduced the mass-produced all-metal plane to the world, but it also incorporated so many other innovations, such as its cantilevered wings and use of corrugated duralumin. In the years to come, these features would put Junkers well ahead in the civilian air industry, with the rest of the world following closely behind on their heels. This concludes our video on the Junkers J-1. What are your thoughts on this armor-plated Scout? Feel free to share your thoughts on this unique vehicle in the comments section. As always, we here at Plane Encyclopedia appreciate your love and support, so feel free to leave a like and subscribe to know exactly when new content rolls out. If you'd like to buy us some fuel to keep us going, visit us on Patreon or via PayPal. Until next time, stay tuned and keep following our updates.